Welcome back. I'm so glad you've joined me. Today we will be exploring creating colorful chords, adding notes for a richer sound in your chord making. This is such a fun process to do. You will notice as we go through that sometimes in chord progressions, there are little numbers next to the chords. What do we do with those? So we're going to learn how to create those colorful chords so you can have a richer sound in your playing. Let's create colorful chords together by adding notes for a richer sound. So adding notes to chords can give the chords a different color and make your music more interesting. For example, adding a 2 next to a chord changes the sound. Let's try this in 3 easy steps. We're going to find the second of the chord. That's the first step. Step number 1, find the second in the chord. So we're going to use an E chord. And we're going to use it in root position for now. Now, the second of the chord is literally the second step in the chord. So here's your root, here's your second. And of course, this is your third and your fifth are the ones that we use. But we're going to add this second right here. So now we're going to add it to the chord in the inversion that you desire. And then we can play it within the chord progression. All right, so step 1 is to find the second of the chord. So we found the second. Now you can either add the second to the chord, or you can replace the third and with the second. So it sounds a little different. So here's it added. Here it is replaced. All right, so it gives you 2 different colors there, 2 different sounds. So the second step, which we just did, was to add it to the chord. Now we can also choose which inversion we desire. Let's go to second inversion of this E chord. So remember, second inversion is starting with the fifth, the root, and the third. So we want to replace the third with the second. So listen to how it sounds in second inversion. Ooh, super cool. Now, if we add the third in, that gives you a little more in the chord. Now, what about first inversion? Let's do first inversion up here. So we have the third, the fifth, and the root right here. Now, the second is here. So we can either leave out the third, or we can use it with the third. Whether you add the second to the existing chord or replace the third with the second is often a matter of what you are looking for as the pianist, or if you're working in a group, a worship team, a band, it's all a matter of what you want as a group for the sound to be. All right, so step 1 was to find the second in the chord. So in our E chord, it was an F sharp. Then we add it to the chord and decide on the inversion we want. So let's replace the third with the second. Here's our first inversion. Here's our second inversion. And then you're going to play it within the chord progression that you're working on. So we're going to use a chord progression of A, D, E, A. Now all of these are major chords. And what we're going to do is I'm going to play it as it is without the second. And then we're going to replace the E with an E2. It's going to have a little 2 next to it. So here we go. We're going to start in first inversion for the A chord. So here's the A chord. Now the D chord. And the E chord, we're going to do second inversion. Back to A. So one more time. Now listen to it with an E2 instead of just an E. Here's the E2. Ooh, that sounds really different. Now let's add the third in as well. All right, let's get some left hand in there. with the added 2. Now let's take out the third and only use the 2. Ooh, so cool. So that gives you a couple of different ways to use an added second. Now, there's also such thing as an added 9. So an added 2 is here, but let's look at an added 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 is the same note as an added 2. However, the 9 is way up here. So when you're adding a 9, it is a similar sound to the 2, except it's going to be above instead of below. Okay, so when you're doing your chord progressions, let's do the same chord progression, except instead of an E2, let's do an E9. So let's start with our A. Or you could do it this way. And you notice I changed inversions in the same measure as I was playing A. That is absolutely allowed. If you want to change inversions within a measure within the same chord, go for it. It gives you a little bit more flavor in that chord. All right, so that's an added 2 and an added 9. Now let's do an added 6th. So instead of the E chord having an added 2 or an added 9, now we're going to do an added 6. So let's, number 1, our step 1 is to find the 6th in the chord. So here's our chord. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now add it. Number 2 is add it to the chord. So this is what it would be in root position. If we wanted it in first inversion, second inversion, back to root. There we go. All right, so that adds another flavor. Or you could eliminate the 5 or the 3, depending on what you're looking for. I kind of like it with all the notes personally, but it is totally a preference. Or if you're working with a group, again, you want to make sure that everyone agrees on the same thing. And if it doesn't matter, then it doesn't matter. Go with your preference. All right, so the third step is to play it within the chord progression. So again, our chord progression is A, D, E, A. And this time for the E, we're going to do an E6. Okay, so let's try this out. Let's try that E6 in a different place. So the E6 is not used as much as the E2 or the E9, but it does add an interesting color to the chord. If you are doing a minor chord with the added note, it's going to sound a little different as well. If you were doing an added second, let's say we're using B minor for our chord. If we're doing an added second, you're going to get a little bit of dissonance between that second and third. But it's a really cool sound. So let's try a different chord progression. We're going to do D, B minor, A major, and then back to D. And we're going to change the B minor. So let's do an added 2 first. So our added 2, find this 2 in the chord, the second. So that's going to be our C sharp. Now we're going to add it to the chord, either with or without the third, and then we're going to play it in the chord progression. So here we go. D, B minor 2, A major, back to D. Now this time, let's add the third 2. D, B minor 2, A, back to D. So that's what an an added 2 would sound like. An added 9, again, we're just going to take this and move it up an octave. So we might end up doing a chord like this with the C sharp way up high. So let's try that again with starting with D. Ooh, I like that. Back to D. Let's do that again. I like that progression. Okay, what about an added 6? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we're adding a G to our B minor chord. That's the added 6. So we found our added note, our 6, which is step number 1. We added it to the chord, and we have to decide which inversion we want. I think we'll start with this inversion, and then we're going to add it to our chord progression. So let's try it out. Let's move the chord progression up. That added 6 adds some very interesting flavor to that chord progression. So to recap, when creating colorful chords, we're adding notes for a richer sound. You want to, number 1, find the note that you're looking for, whether it's an added 2, an added 6, an added 9. Number 2, add it to the chord in the inversion that you desire. And number 3, play it within the chord progression. Have fun with this. There's nothing to it. Those 3 easy steps are all you need to have more color in your chords as you play. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe to the channel. And as always, I love to hear from my audience, so please leave me a comment and I'll catch you in the next video.